Jake Morrison sat in the back row of the classroom, trying to make himself smaller. At 6 feet tall, he was already bigger than most of his classmates at the Galactic Academy. His human frame looked huge next to the delicate beings around him. Classroom was unlike anything on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of glowing crystal that gave off soft blue light. The desks floated in the air, adjusting to each student's height and body type. Jake's desk had taken 3 tries to figure out how to support human weight properly. His study partner, Sixth, sat beside him. Sixth H was a crystalline being from the planet Veltara. Their body looked like living glass, with light dancing through their transparent form. When Sixth was happy, they sparkled. When confused, they turned cloudy. Right now, they were a soft purple color, which Jake had learned meant they were thinking hard. I still do not understand your species' need for physical exercise, Sixth said, their voice like wind chimes. You spent 2 hours yesterday lifting heavy objects and putting them down again. Why? Jake smiled. This was a common question from his alien classmates. Humans need to stay strong and healthy. Our bodies work better when we exercise them. But why do you need to be strong? Asked Veltar, the insectoid student sitting in front of them. Her 4 arms moved gracefully as she spoke. My people have been peaceful for 10,000 years. We have no need for physical strength. Same with my kind, added Nyx, whose gaseous form floated near the ceiling. We simply avoid conflict by dispersing when threatened. Jake thought about how to explain. On Earth, being strong meant you could protect yourself and others. But here at the Academy, the idea of needing protection seemed strange to everyone. The Galactic Academy was built on Harmony Station, a massive space station that orbited a peaceful planet. Students came from all over the galaxy to study here. Jake was one of only 3 humans in the entire Academy. The other 2 were instructors. For 6 months, Jake had been trying to fit in. It was not easy. Human behavior confused his classmates. They did not understand why he was always looking around, checking exits, and positioning himself where he could see the whole room. They thought it was strange that he preferred to sit with his back to the wall. Jake has what humans call situational awareness, explained Lisa Carter, the human cultural liaison. She had arrived a few minutes early for her guest lecture. It is natural for humans to be aware of their surroundings. Professor Quindle, the elderly instructor, glided into the room. The professor was from the Serenity Collective, a species that looked like tall, thin trees with silver bark. They had no eyes that Jake could see, but somehow they could sense everything around them. Welcome, students, to today's lesson on conflict resolution and personal safety, Professor Quindle said, their voice like rustling leaves. Today we will explore how different species handle potentially dangerous situations. Jake perked up. This was interesting. He had been wondering how other species dealt with threats. As you know, the professor continued, our galaxy has been at peace for over a millennium. Most civilized species have evolved beyond the need for violence. However, it is still important to understand how to avoid dangerous situations. The professor gestured to a student in the front row. Kylth, would you please demonstrate how your people handle a threatening situation? Kylth, a being that looked like a walking flower, stood up. My people simply release calming pheromones. Any aggressive creature becomes peaceful when they smell our scent. Kylth released a sweet smell that made the whole class feel relaxed. Excellent, Professor Quindle said. Mordek, your turn. Mordek was from a species that could change colors. He demonstrated how his people could blend perfectly with their surroundings, becoming nearly invisible. If there is danger, we simply hide until it passes. One by one, students showed their species methods. Some could teleport short distances. Others could create illusions or communicate telepathically to calm hostile minds. All of their techniques were gentle, non-violent ways to avoid conflict. Jake noticed that none of them actually fought back. They all ran, hid, or tried to make the threat go away peacefully. It was so different from human history, where people had to fight to survive. "Very good demonstrations," Professor Quindle said. "Now let us hear from our human student. Jake, how do humans handle dangerous situations?" Jake stood up slowly. Every alien eye in the room focused on him. He felt like a giant among children. "Well, Professor, humans learn basic self-defense. From a young age." "Self-defense?" Zixth asked, their crystalline form turning orange with curiosity. "What is that?" "It means protecting yourself when someone tries to hurt you," Jake explained. "Instead of running away or hiding, humans learn to defend themselves." The class went quiet. The concept seemed foreign to them. A few students exchanged worried glances. "Fascinating," Professor Quindle said, though Jake could hear uncertainty in their voice. "Could you perhaps demonstrate this self-defense for the class?" Jake hesitated. He had learned basic self-defense in high school, and later in the military. But looking at his delicate classmates, he wondered if it would frighten them. "I do not think that would be appropriate, Professor," Jake said carefully. "Human self-defense techniques might seem aggressive to your students." "Nonsense," Professor Quindle said. "We are all scholars here. We should learn about different cultural approaches to personal safety. Please show us these techniques." Zixith's form turned bright blue with excitement. "Yes, please show us. I am very curious about human methods." Other students nodded agreement. Veltar leaned forward with interest. Even Nyx condensed into a tighter cloud to get a better view. "Very well," Jake said. "But remember, these are just basic techniques. Nothing dangerous." He walked to the front of the classroom. The floating desks moved aside to give him space. Jake looked at his eager classmates and felt a knot in his stomach. Something told him this was not going to go well. Human self-defense is based on the idea that sometimes you cannot run away, Jake began. Sometimes you have to stand and fight to protect yourself or others. Several students gasped. The word fight was apparently shocking to them. But fighting causes harm, Mordek said, his color shifting to worried purple. Why would anyone choose to cause harm? We do not want to cause harm, Jake explained. But sometimes bad people try to hurt good people. When that happens, good people need to know how to stop them. Professor Quindle raised one of their branch-like arms. I think we should see this demonstration. It will help us understand human culture better. Jake nodded reluctantly. He had no idea that this simple demonstration would change everything at the Galactic Academy forever. Jake stood at the front of the classroom, feeling every alien eye watching him. He had never felt so aware of being different. His human instincts were already kicking in, automatically scanning the room for exits and potential threats. To him, this was normal. To his classmates, it was about to become terrifying. The first thing humans learn is called situational awareness, Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm and friendly. We always pay attention to what is happening around us. He began walking slowly around the room, his head moving slightly as his eyes swept the space. Right now, I can see that there are 2 exits in this room. I know where each student is. Sitting. I can hear the ventilation system running, and I noticed that Professor Quindle's bark has changed color slightly, which probably means they are curious. The students watched in fascination as Jake continued his patrol. I can smell Kyleth's calming pheromones from earlier, and I can sense that Nyx has moved closer to the ceiling vent. These are all normal things that humans notice without thinking about it. Zixith's crystalline form turned a deep orange. You observe all of this at once? How is your mind not overwhelmed? Human brains are built for this, Jake explained. Our Ancestors had to watch for predators and enemies to survive. This awareness became part of our nature. Several students shifted uncomfortably. The idea that humans came from a world where they had to constantly watch for danger was unsettling to species that had known only peace. The second basic skill is positioning, Jake continued. Humans try to put themselves in the best possible place if something bad happens. He moved to a corner of the room where he could see all the exits and had a solid wall behind him. See how I can watch the whole room from here? No one can sneak up behind me, and I can reach either exit quickly if needed. But why would someone sneak up behind you? Asked Veltar, her forearms trembling slightly. Who would want to harm you? Jake realized he was already making them nervous, but he pushed on. Not everyone in the universe is peaceful. Some beings choose to hurt others. Humans prepare for that possibility. Professor Quindle's bark had turned a worried gray color. Perhaps we should move to less disturbing techniques? These are the least disturbing techniques, Jake said honestly. But I can show you some basic physical movements if you want. The class nodded, though Jake noticed that some students had moved their floating desks further away from him. I will need a volunteer to demonstrate with, Jake said. Do not worry. I will not hurt anyone. These are just slow practice movements. Zixith's form sparkled with courage. I will help you, friend Jake. Are you sure? Jake asked. Your crystal structure might be different from what I am used to. I am stronger than I look, Zixith assured him, floating down from their desk. My people may be peaceful, but we are not fragile. Jake nodded and gestured for Zixith H to stand in front of him. The first thing humans learn is how to block. If someone tries to hit you, you can stop their attack with your arms. He raised his arms in a basic blocking position. Zixith, please try to tap my shoulder very gently. I will show the class how to block it. Zixith H reached out slowly with one of their crystalline appendages. Jake moved his arm to intercept it, and there was a sharp crack as his flesh contacted the crystal surface. The sound echoed through the silent classroom like a gunshot. Every student froze. Several gasped. Nix immediately dispersed into a thin cloud and started drifting toward the ceiling vent. What was that sound? Mordek asked, his colors flashing between purple and red. With alarm, Jake looked down at his arm. There was a small red mark where he had blocked, but it did not hurt much. That was the sound of blocking. It is normal. Normal? Zixith's form had turned a pale, shocked white. You injured yourself to stop my touch? It is not really an injury, Jake tried to explain. Humans can handle small amounts of pain. The alternative would be getting hit somewhere more important, which would hurt worse. The concept seemed impossible for them to understand. Professor Quindle had backed away from the demonstration area, their bark now a deep gray color of distress. Let me show you something easier, Jake said, seeing their reaction. This is how humans escape if someone grabs them. He gently took hold of Zixith's crystalline arm. If someone grabs your wrist like this, humans twist and pull in a specific way to break free. Jake demonstrated the escape technique, moving slowly and carefully. But even at his gentlest pace, the movement was quick and decisive. Zixith's arm was suddenly free, and they stumbled backward from the unexpected force. How did you move so fast? Veltar asked, her compound eyes wide with shock. That was not fast, Jake said, confused. I was being very careful and slow. Slow? Nix's gaseous form had spread across half the ceiling. You moved like lightning. Jake looked around at his classmates. They were all staring at him with expressions he had never seen before. Fear. Not curiosity or confusion, but actual fear. I think we should stop the demonstration, Professor Quindle said, their voice shaking like leaves in a storm. But I have barely shown you anything, Jake protested. These are the most basic techniques. Human children learned these in elementary school. This statement made everything worse. The idea that human children learned to fight was horrifying to his classmates. Children? Kyle's flower-like head was wilting. You teach violence to your young? We teach them to protect themselves, Jake corrected. There is a difference. I do not see the difference, Professor Quindle said firmly. Violence is violence. Jake felt frustrated. He was trying to help them understand, but they only seemed more scared. Look, let me show you what humans do if someone actually attacks them. Then you will understand why we need these skills. No, Professor Quindle said quickly. I think we have seen enough. But Jake was already moving. He turned to Veltar, who was closer to him than the others. Veltar, could you pretend to attack me? Just pretend. I will show everyone how humans defend themselves. Attack you? Veltar's forearms were shaking. I do not know how to attack anyone. Just try to grab me or push me, Jake said. Make it look like you want to hurt me. Veltar looked around the room nervously. Her classmates were watching with terrified fascination. Professor Quindle was making urgent gestures for her to refuse, but scientific curiosity won over fear. Very well, Veltar said. But I do not want to actually hurt you. You cannot hurt me, Jake said with confidence. Just try your best to grab me. Veltar approached slowly, reaching out with two of her arms toward Jake's shoulders. She moved, carefully, telegraphing her intentions clearly. Jake waited until she was close enough, then responded with what he considered basic self-defense. What happened next would be talked about in the Galactic Academy for years to come. In one smooth motion, Jake caught Veltar's arms, stepped to the side, and swept her legs. She fell backward, and Jake controlled her descent until she was lying on the floor with him kneeling beside her. One of his hands was positioned near her throat, and the other held both of her arms. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds. The classroom erupted in chaos. Nix completely dispersed and disappeared into the ventilation system. Kyle H released a cloud of panic pheromones that made everyone feel terrified. Mordek's colors flashed so rapidly that he looked like a broken light display. Zixith's crystal form turned completely transparent, and they dropped to the floor like a stone. Professor Quindle began making a high-pitched sound that might have been screaming. Jake immediately released Veltar and helped her to her feet. Are you okay? Did I hurt you? Veltar stood on shaking legs, all 4 arms wrapped around herself. What? What did you do to me? I just demonstrated a basic takedown, Jake said, genuinely confused by their reaction. It is one of the first things humans learn in self-defense class. You could have killed her, Professor Quindle whispered, their bark now black with terror. What? No, Jake protested. I was being very gentle. I made sure she did not get hurt when she fell. Gentle? Zixth had managed to reform somewhat, though they were still pale and shaky. You moved like a predator, like something from the old stories. Jake looked around at his terrified classmates and finally began to understand. They were not just surprised by his demonstration. They were absolutely terrified of him. I think, Professor Quindle said in a voice barely above a whisper, that this demonstration is over. Jake stood in the center of the classroom, watching his classmates cower away from him. Their fear was so intense that he could practically feel it in the air. He had never seen anything like it. Even during his military training, people had never looked at him with such terror. Please, Jake said, raising his hands in what he hoped was a calming gesture. I did not mean to scare anyone. What I showed you was really basic stuff. Basic? Zixth managed to reform enough to speak, though their crystal body was still flickering between transparent and solid. You moved like death itself. Jake did not understand. I was holding back. I was being as gentle as possible. Holding back? Professor Quindle's bark had turned completely black. You mean you can do worse than that? Jake realized he had said the wrong thing. Well, yes, but only if someone was really trying to hurt me. What I showed you was just for practice. The admission sent another wave of panic through the room. Kyle Tate released more fear pheromones, and several students started moving their floating desks toward the exits. I do not think you understand, Jake said, trying to explain. Those techniques are for when someone is not really dangerous. Like if someone pushes you or grabs you, but they do not really want to hurt you badly. What do you do when someone does want to hurt you badly? Veltar asked, though she looked like she regretted asking. Jake hesitated. He could see that his classmates were already terrified, but they had asked a direct question. Well, humans have different levels of response depending on the threat. Show us, Zixith said suddenly. Their crystal form had turned a deep red color. I want to see what humans do when they face real danger. Zixith, no, Professor Quindle protested. We have seen enough. No, Zixth H insisted. I need to understand. Jake is my friend, and I want to know what he is capable of. Jake looked around the room. Half the students looked like they wanted to run away. The other half looked terrified, but curious. He made a decision that would change everything. Okay, Jake said. But remember, I would never actually use these techniques unless someone was trying to seriously hurt me or my friends. He moved to the center of the room again. What I showed you before was for minor threats. Someone who is being annoying or aggressive, but not really dangerous. But if someone actually wanted to hurt me, Jake shifted into a combat stance. The change was immediate and dramatic. His casual, friendly posture disappeared, replaced by something that looked deadly serious. His weight shifted forward onto the balls of his feet. His hands came up into a guard position. His eyes became cold and focused. The transformation was so complete that several students gasped. This was not the same Jake, who had been laughing and joking with them for 6 months. This was something else entirely. This is a basic fighting stance, Jake said, his voice now calm and controlled. From here, a human can attack or defend very quickly. He began moving in slow motion, demonstrating basic strikes. These are the primary targets humans aim for in a real fight. The throat, to stop breathing. The solar plexus, to cause pain and disable. The knees, to prevent escape. With each target he named, Jake showed a slow-motion strike, even moving. At a fraction of his normal speed, his movements were precise and controlled. It was clear that he knew exactly how to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. The eyes are another target, Jake continued, demonstrating a finger strike that stopped just short of an imaginary opponent's face. Humans can blind an enemy permanently with this technique. Nix had completely vanished into the ventilation system by now. Several other students were making soft sounds of distress. But these are still not the most dangerous techniques, Jake said, not noticing how his words were affecting his audience. These are for when you want to disable someone without killing them. The word killing hit the classroom like a physical blow. Professor Quindle made a sound like breaking branches. Kyle's flower head closed completely. Mordecai's colors went completely gray. You. You know how to kill? Veltar whispered. Jake nodded, still not understanding how shocking this was to them. All humans learn basic killing techniques. It is part of our survival training. Show. U.S., Zixth said, their voice barely audible. Zixth, please, Professor Quindle begged, but Jake was already moving. He demonstrated a neck strike that would crush a windpipe, a palm strike that would drive bone fragments into the brain, a knee strike that would shatter ribs and puncture organs. These techniques are designed to end the fight quickly, Jake explained as he moved. When someone is trying to kill you, you have to be able to kill them first. He showed them how humans could break necks, crush skulls, and destroy vital organs with their bare hands. All of it was demonstrated in slow motion, with careful explanations of the anatomy and physics involved. The human body is basically a weapon, Jake said, finishing his demonstration. Every part of it can be used to cause damage. Fists, elbows, knees, feet, even the head can be used to strike. He looked around at his classmates, expecting questions or curiosity. Instead, he saw absolute horror. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. No one moved, no one spoke. They just stared at him like he was a monster. "Jake," Professor Quindle finally whispered, "do all humans know these things?" "Of course," Jake said. "We learn them in school. Some people study more advanced techniques. But everyone knows the basics. Even your children?" Jake nodded. Human children start learning basic self-defense around age 5 or 6. By the time they are teenagers, most can handle themselves in a fight. This revelation sent another shockwave through the room. The idea that human children were taught to fight and kill was beyond their comprehension. "What kind of world do you come from?" Zixth asked, their crystal form now completely colorless. Jake thought about Earth, about its history of wars and conflicts, about the predators that had hunted his ancestors, about the criminals and bullies that still existed in human society. "A dangerous one," he said simply. At that moment, the classroom door burst open. Administrator Korth, the reptilian dean of the academy, rushed in with 3 security guards behind him. "We received reports of violence in this classroom," Korth said, then stopped when he saw Jake standing in the center of the room, surrounded by terrified students. "There is no violence," Jake said, confused. "I was just demonstrating human self-defense techniques." Administrator Korth looked around at the traumatized students. Zixth H was barely holding their crystal form together. Professor Quindle's bark was completely black. Several students had fled the room entirely. "Student Morrison," Korth said carefully, "please step away from the other students." "Why?" Jake asked. "I was not hurting anyone." "Please," Korth said, his voice tight with fear. "Just move away from them." Jake looked around and finally understood. They were not just scared of his techniques. They were scared of him. They thought he was dangerous. They thought he might hurt them. "I would never hurt any of you," Jake said, his voice breaking slightly. "You are my friends." "We know," Zixth H said, though their voice was shaking. "But now we know what you could do if you wanted to." The security guards had formed a circle around Jake, though they kept their distance. They were treating him like a wild animal that might attack at any moment. "I think," Administrator Korth said slowly, "that we need to have a serious discussion about human presence at this academy." Jake felt his heart sink. 6 months of building friendships and earning trust had been destroyed in 15 minutes, all because he had tried to help them understand his culture. "This is not over," Professor Quindle said, though they would not look directly at Jake. "We need to contact the human embassy immediately." As the security guards escorted Jake from the room, he could hear his classmates whispering behind him. The words Deathworlder and Predator kept coming up. Jake realized that everything had changed. He was no longer just a student at the Galactic Academy. He was something else entirely. Something that had no place in their peaceful universe. The demonstration was over, but the real consequences were just beginning. Jake sat alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars through his window. 3 days had passed since the demonstration, and he had not been allowed to attend classes. The Academy administration had placed him under what they called protective supervision, which felt a lot like house arrest. His room was comfortable enough, with all the basic amenities a human needed. But the door was locked from the outside, and security guards stood watch in the hallway. Every few hours, someone would bring him food and water, but they never stayed to talk. The isolation was the worst part. Jake had gotten used to the constant chatter of his alien classmates, the sound of their various languages mixing together in the halls. Now there was only silence. He had tried to call his family on Earth, but the communication system had been restricted. He could send messages, but could not receive any responses. For all he knew, word of his violent demonstration had already reached Earth and destroyed the entire exchange program. A soft chime indicated someone was at his door. Jake looked up hopefully, but it was just another meal delivery. The server, a floating robot, left the tray and departed without a word. Jake was picking at his food when he heard voices in the hallway. Not the usual security guards, but actual conversation. His heart jumped when he recognized one of the voices. "I do not care about your security protocols," Lisa Carter was saying. "I am the human cultural liaison for this academy, and I demand to see the student immediately." "Miss Carter, please understand," came the voice of Administrator Korth. "The student has displayed extremely dangerous capabilities. We are still evaluating the situation. The student has a name," Lisa said firmly. "And Jake Morrison is no more dangerous than any other human being." Jake heard the sound of his door unlocking. Lisa Carter entered, followed by Administrator Korth and 2 security guards. Lisa was a small woman by human standards, but Jake had never been so happy to see another person. "Jake," Lisa said, rushing over to him, "are you okay? Have they hurt you?" "I am fine," Jake said, though he did not feel fine. "But I think I have ruined everything." Lisa looked around the room, then back at Administrator Korth. "Can we have some privacy?" "I am afraid that is not possible," Korth replied. "Security protocols require continuous monitoring, then monitor from outside," Lisa said. "I need to speak with my student alone." After a brief argument, Korth agreed to wait in the hallway. Lisa waited until the door closed before sitting down across from Jake. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said. Jake explained the entire demonstration, from the basic awareness techniques to the combat strikes. Lisa listened without interrupting, though her expression grew more concerned with each detail. "Jake," she said when he finished, "do you realize what you showed them?" "Basic self-defense," Jake said defensively. "Nothing that any human would not know." "That is exactly the problem," Lisa said. "These species have no concept of personal violence. They have been peaceful for thousands of years. To them, what you demonstrated was not self-defense. It was proof that humans are natural killers." Jake felt sick. "But I was trying to help them understand our culture." "And you did," Lisa said sadly. "You showed them that human culture is built on the ability to cause harm. They are terrified of you, Jake. Not just you personally, but all humans." She pulled out a data pad and showed him the latest reports. "The story has spread throughout the academy. Students are requesting transfers to other institutions. Several alien governments have expressed concerns about the human exchange program." Jake read the reports with growing horror. The story had been exaggerated with each telling. According to some accounts, he had moved faster than the eye could follow. Others claimed he had actually injured students during his demonstration. A few reports suggested that he had threatened to kill his classmates. "This is all wrong," Jake said. "I never hurt anyone. I never threatened anyone." "I know," Lisa said, "but fear makes people imagine things. Your classmates were so scared that they convinced themselves you were even more dangerous than you actually demonstrated." "What happens now?" Jake asked. "The Academy administration is meeting tonight to decide your fate," Lisa said. "There are 3 options. They can expel you from the Academy. They can continue your isolation indefinitely. or they can allow you to return to classes with heavy restrictions. What kind of restrictions? No physical contact with other students. No participation in any activities that might be interpreted as aggressive. Constant supervision by security personnel. Jake slumped in his chair. That is not education. That is imprisonment. I am trying to convince them that you are not a threat, Lisa said. But the fear is very real. Some of the faculty members are talking about ending the entire human exchange program. Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and an automated voice began broadcasting in multiple languages. All personnel report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Unknown vessels have entered station perimeter. All personnel report to emergency stations. Lisa and Jake looked at each other in confusion. Harmony Station was in neutral space, far from any conflict zones. What kind of unknown vessels would come here? Administrator Korth burst through the door, his reptilian face showing more emotion than Jake had ever seen. Miss Carter, we need to evacuate the human students immediately. What is happening? Lisa asked. Pirates, Korth said, his voice tight with fear. A fleet of them. They are demanding that we surrender the station or they will destroy it. Jake stood up. Pirates? Are you sure? The sensor readings are clear, Korth said. 12 armed vessels of unknown origin. They are not responding to diplomatic communications. Lisa looked concerned. How is that possible? I thought the Galactic Patrol kept pirates away from civilized space. These are not ordinary pirates, Korth said. They appear to be from the Outer Rim. Species that the civilized galaxy has been trying to ignore. Jake felt a chill. He had heard stories about the Outer Rim species. They were the ones who had not evolved past violence. The ones who still fought wars and conquered territories. What is the Academy's security like? Jake asked. We have a small security force, Korth said, but they are trained for crowd control. And minor disputes. Nothing like this. Can you contact the Galactic Patrol for help? We have tried. The nearest patrol ship is 6 hours away. The pirates will be here in less than 1 hour. Jake looked out his window and could see lights in the distance. The pirate fleet was approaching fast. What are you going to do? Lisa asked. Surrender, Korth said simply. We have no choice. The Academy is not equipped for combat. Surrender? Jake could not believe what he was hearing. You are just going to give up? What else can we do? Korth asked. We are scholars, not warriors. We have no weapons, no training, no experience with violence. Jake looked at Lisa, then back at Korth. I do. What are you saying? Lisa asked. I have military training, Jake said. I know how to fight. I know how to defend people. Korth stepped back instinctively. You want to fight 12 ships full of pirates? I want to help protect the Academy, Jake said. There are thousands of students here. Innocent people who cannot defend themselves. Jake, Lisa said carefully, you cannot fight an entire pirate fleet by yourself. I know that, Jake said, but I can organize a defense. I can teach people how to protect themselves. I can do something other than just surrender. Korth looked horrified. You want to turn our academy into a battleground? The pirates are already doing that, Jake pointed out. I just want to make sure we win. The alarms continued to blare. Through his window, Jake could see the pirate ships getting closer. In less than an hour, they would dock with the station. Then the real violence would begin. You said I was dangerous, Jake said to Korth. You said I was a threat to the Academy. Maybe you were right, but maybe that is exactly what you need right now. Korth looked at Lisa, then back at Jake. The fear in his eyes was still there. The pirate ships attached to Harmony Station with loud crashes that shook the entire structure. Jake could hear screaming from the corridors outside as students and faculty ran in panic. These were beings who had never experienced real violence, and now it was coming for them. "They are inside the station," Korth said, his voice shaking as he watched his security monitors. "My security teams are not responding. I think they have been overwhelmed." Jake moved to the door. "Let me out." "I cannot do that," Korth said. "You are still under protective supervision." "Your protective supervision is about to get everyone killed," Jake said firmly. "Those pirates are not going to be impressed by your peaceful ways. They are going to take what they want and hurt anyone who gets in their way." Lisa put her hand on Korth's arm. "He is right. This is exactly the kind of situation humans have been preparing for their entire evolutionary history." Korth looked at his monitors again. Pirate soldiers were moving through the corridors, and Academy security was nowhere to be seen. Students were hiding in classrooms and dormitories, but it was only a matter of time before they were found. "What would you do?" Korth asked Jake. "First, I need to get to the students," Jake said. "They need to be organized and protected. Second, I need to find anyone who can help fight back. Third, we need to set up defensive positions and make the pirates pay for every meter of station they take." "But people will get hurt," Korth protested. "People are going to get hurt anyway," Jake said. "The question is whether it will be pirates or students." An explosion somewhere in the station made the decision for them. Korth unlocked Jake's door. With shaking hands, Jake immediately took charge. "Lisa, contact the other human instructors. Tell them to meet me at the main classroom level. Korth, I need you to announce over the station communication system that all students should barricade themselves in the largest classrooms and wait for help." "What are you going to do?" Korth asked. "What humans do best," Jake said grimly. "Fight." "Back." Jake ran through the corridors toward the classroom level. Along the way, he encountered groups of terrified alien students hiding in alcoves and storage rooms. Most fled when they saw him coming, still afraid of the dangerous human. But not all of them. Zixth stepped out from behind a pillar as Jake passed. The crystalline being was still pale and shaky, but they seemed determined. "Jake," Zixth said, "I want to help." Jake stopped. "Zixth, this is going to be dangerous. Real violence, not a demonstration." "I know," Zixth said, "but you are my friend. And those pirates are threatening innocent people. My people may be peaceful, but we are not cowards." Jake felt a surge of respect for his study partner. "Okay, stay close to me and do exactly what I say." They continued toward the classrooms, and more students began joining them. Veltar emerged from the side corridor, all four arms ready for action. Mordek appeared, his colors shifting to determined purple. Even Kyle Tate showed up, though the flower being looked terrified. "We want to help," Veltar said. "We may not know how to fight, but we can learn." Jake looked at the small group of alien students. 3 days ago, they had been terrified of him. Now they were volunteering to follow him into battle. "Are you sure?" Jake asked. "I cannot guarantee your safety." "You cannot guarantee our safety if we hide either," Zixth pointed out. "At least this way we can do something." Jake nodded. "Then listen carefully. I am going to teach you the most important lesson humans know: how to work together to survive." They reached the main classroom level just as the pirates broke through the security barriers. Jake could see them coming down the corridor armed. Beings from species he did not recognize, carrying weapons and moving with predatory confidence. "Everyone get behind me," Jake said. "Zixth, can your people create barriers with your crystal abilities?" "Yes," Zixth said, concentrating. Suddenly, crystal walls sprouted from the floor, creating defensive positions in the corridor. "Veltar, you have 4 arms. Can you operate multiple control panels at once?" "I can try," Veltar said. Good. Lock down all the side corridors. Force them to come at us from one direction. Jake quickly positioned his alien friends in defensive positions. It was not ideal. None of them had any combat training, but it was better than letting them be sitting targets. The pirates rounded the corner, expecting to find terrified academics. Instead, they found Jake Morrison waiting for them. What happened? Next would become legend throughout the Galactic Academy. Jake moved like his alien friends had never seen before. Not the slow, careful demonstrations from the classroom, but with the full speed and precision of a trained human warrior. He flowed between the pirates like water, striking vital points and disabling opponents before they could react. But he was not alone. Zixt H created crystal barriers that confused and separated the pirates. Veltar used her multiple arms to control the station systems, locking doors and cutting off escape routes. Mordek used his camouflage abilities to appear behind enemies and distract them at crucial moments. For the first time, the alien students saw violence not as senseless destruction, but as protection. Jake's terrifying abilities were being used to save innocent lives. Every strike he made was precise and controlled, designed to stop the threat without unnecessary cruelty. "Now I understand," Zixit said as they watched Jake disarm another pirate. "You do not fight because you want to hurt people. You fight because you want to protect them." The battle moved through the corridors as more Academy security arrived, inspired by Jake's example. What had started as a small group of scared students became an organized defense force. The pirates, who had expected easy prey, found themselves facing unexpected resistance. They had weapons and experience, but they did not have the coordination and determination that Jake had instilled in the defenders. As the last pirate was subdued, Jake slumped against a wall, breathing hard. He had several minor injuries, but nothing serious. More importantly, all of his alien friends were safe. "Is it over?" Kyle asked, their flower head beginning to open again. "For now," Jake said. "The Galactic Patrol should be here soon to clean up." Administrator Korth arrived with a larger security force, looking amazed at what he saw. The corridors were damaged but secure. The pirates were defeated or fleeing. And somehow, the terrifying human student had saved them all. "Jake," Korth said slowly, "I owe you an apology." "We all do," Professor Quindle said, arriving with a group of faculty members. The professor's bark was no longer black with fear, but had returned to its normal silver color. "We were so afraid of your capacity for violence that we forgot you. Also have the capacity for protection." Zixt H moved to stand beside Jake, their crystal form sparkling with pride. "Jake is not dangerous to his friends. He is dangerous to people who threaten his friends. There is a big difference." Over the following days, the atmosphere at the Academy changed completely. Jake was no longer the scary human who knew how to kill. He was the protector who had saved them all when they needed him most. The Academy administration established new courses in human-style personal protection, taught by Jake himself. But these were not lessons in violence. They were lessons in teamwork, awareness, and the difference between aggression and defense. Students who had once fled from Jake now sought him out. They wanted to understand how humans could be both peaceful and prepared for war. They wanted to learn how to protect themselves and others without losing their peaceful nature. "The key," Jake explained to his new self-defense class, "is understanding why you fight. Humans do not fight because we enjoy violence. We fight because we love peace enough to defend it." Zixith, now Jake's teaching assistant, added their own perspective. "Each species has different gifts. Some of us can create barriers, some can hide, some can heal. But Jake's people have the gift of standing between the innocent and those who would harm them." The story of the Deathworlder demonstration became part of Academy legend, but it was told differently now. It was not a tale of human savagery, but of human sacrifice, the willingness to carry the burden of violence so that others could remain. Peaceful. Professor Quindle, who had been most terrified by Jake's original demonstration, became one of his strongest supporters. I understand now, the professor said. Violence is not evil when it protects the innocent. Jake and his people do not choose to be warriors because they love war. They choose to be warriors because they love peace. Jake's friendship with his alien classmates grew stronger than ever. They no longer saw his human instincts as frightening, but as protective. His constant awareness was not paranoia. It was vigilance on their behalf. His physical capabilities were not threats. They were shields protecting those who could not protect themselves. Months later, as Jake sat in the same classroom where he had given his infamous demonstration, he reflected on how much had changed. The room was full of alien students practicing basic self-defense techniques, adapted for their various physiologies. They moved slowly and carefully, but with growing confidence. Remember, Jake told the class, the goal is not to become fighters. The goal is to become protectors. There is a difference. Zixt H raised one crystalline appendage. What is the difference, Teacher Jake? Jake smiled at his best friend and study partner. Fighters look for battles. Protectors hope they never have to fight at all, but they stay ready, Jay.